A lot of my work is in helping service providers to tell personal stories about themselves to build trust with potential clients. So potential clients can see who they are, can feel like they know, like, and trust you before they engage you, before they work with you. And I think that's because in some respects, you are involved in you're either involved or you're associated with the delivery of your service.
Mm.
So then personal stories become quite important, but personal stories are a tricky thing. So just last year, I was reading a book called Uncommon Measure by a lady called Natalie Hodges about a journey through music, performance, and the science of time. So she was a
Mm.
musician and she tells her story, but she says at the outset of the book that she realized that telling her story actually changed the story itself because it changed her relationship between herself and her story. And I was like, oh, that's quite interesting because actually when I go through this with clients, there is this change. It's like in some respects, you can kind of tell this, you can kind of tell your own story for narcissistic reasons because it improves your understanding of yourself, just the mere fact of telling it, and it alters your perceptions of the things that have happened in the past, and it maybe allows you to unlock certain things or move forward in certain ways. So there is that as well. I think more recently as well, though, I've realized that telling your personal stories is a way. It's a communications bridge. It's reaching out to people, and rather than just telling them who you are, what you value, what you stand for, it's showing them who you are, what you value,
Mm.
what you stand for. But the kernel at the center of that has to be you. There is a kernel that is, your values, who you are, your unique genius that you bring to the world. And I have to say that in terms of holding up the mirrors to you, in terms of allowing you to understand what your genius is, what your values are. It's like, I could do that, but it's not really my forte. So I've got Aveline Clarke back on the show today. I've been working recently with Av for this myself. So I thought, well, great, let's get Av back on the show to explore this topic of understanding, truly and deeply at the deepest possible level that you're capable of, who you are and what you bring to the world. So Av, welcome back.
What a beautiful way to create some context for that, Rob. I was completely engrossed. I'm like, yeah, I want to listen to this. Oh crap, I'm the one that's answering the questions.
You're in
Hello,
the hot
thank
seat, yeah.
you. I'm in the hot seat. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great. Perhaps for anyone listening who hasn't heard you on the show before, perhaps you could just give us a short summary of who you are, where you are in the world.
Thank you. So I live in Australia, East Coast, near the Gold Coast, and I obviously I've known you for a number of years in a couple of different scenarios, as in business lives. But effectively my background is the human journey and creating experiences. I did it in the corporate world, and I've been in small business myself for about 15 years now. And I met you, of course, when I was sort of fell into marketing automation all those years back, which was effectively delivering on a journey. And through my own journey, I figured out a few hard truths, I think, that were never explained to me, but I knew at the deepest core of me were really necessary in order for me to be not just successful at what I was doing, but have a sense of meaning and fulfillment. And through the School of Hard Knocks, I figured out what gave me fulfillment, but I also discovered that in my clients. I now, of course, run the Six Star Leaders podcast, the Six Star Community, and you were a co-author on the book that we did a couple of years ago, How to Be a Six-Star Business. And I have a business called Journey Point, and that's been my actual business. Six Star was a passion project, and now it's very evident that the work that I do holistically belongs together. So the program, the process that I take my clients through Journey Point is actually called the Six Star Journey. And it's the journey to uncover the self and then bring the self to the market, to the world in the most authentic, unique way that's right for them to create that engagement with their prospects and eventual customers.
And that's what the world needs, I think.
Mm.
I think anyone listening to this will probably, hopefully, have nodded along to that.
Mm.
I think it's telling as well that, like, what you're doing at the moment took a bit of time. Like you mentioned, the School of Hard Knocks. I think it's kind of a requirement to go through the School of Hard Knocks. I don't actually think there's a way of shortcutting it, because that's kind of the universe's way of teaching you things about you in order for you to get to the points that you need to get to.
Yes, I remember when I was back in the corporate world, we're talking 15, 16 years ago, and a woman in an executive there, for some reason, told me about this book. And it was, and the name, now that I'm in the moment, almost escapes me, but it had gotten the title. Anyway, and I read this book, and it was not necessarily religious or a spiritual book, but it kind of was, and it was about the human condition. And it was simply that you are, in order to know who you are, you've got to know, figure out who you're not. And it's true. And I learned that back then. And then, of course, I went through a lot. And I heard something even today. So I'm still learning. To me, life is learning. You know, the journey is about learning, and it's learning about yourself. You know, we've got to figure out who we're not. And unfortunately, we're born into and brought up in a system, in a matrix system, through the education system, the financial system, all the rest, all the systems that exist. And all you've got to do is sit at home, turn on that little box that beams out, you know, words and spews things to you if you want to tell you how to think and what to do. And unfortunately, a lot of us have been brought up in this system. So our subconscious has been programmed in a certain way. And it's only through the School of Hard Knocks and consciously peeling back these layers of, hang on, that's not me. Oh, that's not me. Oh, I don't like that. That's not me either. To figure out, oh, this is me. And I was reflecting this morning, actually, listening to a documentary, and I realized that I'm not sure that, like you just said, that you can't just miraculously get to this place of knowing unless you had the most inspired, pure, organic upbringing without any false narratives and, you know, conditioning. I think, you know, it just goes without saying, even if you had that, you still have to figure out who you are.
Mm.
And that means trying certain things and learning about intuition and learning about following that path of knowing for yourself. I also want to mention something that's really coming through to me through just some words and whispers. And it's this: if we don't fully love what we do in our business, we can't deliver the most amazing service. We can't be super successful if we don't love what we do. How do you love what you do? Well, you've got to know and align, first of all, know who you are, and then align that knowing, i.e. your genius, with your business. You can't get there any other way. So
I feel like it creates a vibration that feels right, and it feels right to you, and it feels right to the people that you serve as well, because they can sense it.
Absolutely. And the first time I started talking about vibration to a potential customer, she just said, "Oh my God, I feel like I'm in a, you know, a very different kind of meeting here." She said, "But I like what you're saying." And then I said, "Look, it's all about vibration. If you're talking to a prospect or your customers without having this internal clarity and knowing of who you are, you're not vibrating on the right level." And she got that. And then the other question I've had from prospects is, "Aveline, how do I know that this is going to work? How do I know that I'm going to attract the right people after going through your process and figuring all this stuff out?" And I said, well, you don't. But I can tell you, I promise you, once you've figured out who you are and what your genius is and you've aligned it, you'll be in a completely different vibration and you will attract the right people, because that's one of the laws of the universe. We can't, it's just the way it is. And unless you actually are sending the message out to the universe that there's something wrong with me and no one wants to buy my product or service, then the people are going to come, but it's a vibration.
Yeah, and I think we've all experienced that on a personal level when someone that we love walks into the room, they've had a bad day, they somehow, without saying anything, manage to suck all the air out of the environment. Or it could be the opposite, and it doesn't have to be high output, high energy. It's just like a way of
Yeah.
being, I guess
Yeah.
that's that we sense.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking as you were talking, and you mentioned the matrix in the box and kind of just absorbing things that then become laid on top of who we are. I think it occurred to me recently, I was reading a book of essays by Ursula Le Guin, and she was saying that reading is a very active thing to do, in the sense you're co-creating with the author in your imagination. You're kind of co-creating that environment of what happened in that story, and you're more actively participating in the story. Like, it's completely different to read Harry Potter than it is to watch Harry Potter at the cinema. At the cinema, you're a passive observer, just viewing what the film people have prepared for you, which is fine as an art form, and I'm not necessarily bashing that. But I think the reason that reading is better is because you're active in the story. It's like, it's not that we literally imagine ourselves being Harry Potter, but we imagine ourselves being there in our mind's eye. We create the world, we create everything. So I think that's, you know, I've had clients in the past query like, why don't why don't we tell stories in video first? And it's like, yeah, you could do, but I think the reason to start with writing is because it's more active. It's this active co-creation, and the co-creation allows people to envisage what is possible for themselves, and that's the difference. It allows them to
Yeah.
imagine something. It allows them to imagine something that they didn't previously think was possible before reading that email or reading that story.
Totally agree. And from experience working with different customers and with different budgets who've ended up creating different things along that customer journey after doing the work and figuring out who they are and all the pieces we work on, then we look at the assets and what they've got to create. Those that have had the money and the resources to go forward and create a bunch of things, do it well. What I've seen is that the video is the use of video is really great in capturing the attention up front.
Yeah.
And it's that initial piece. It literally could be the first 2 minutes of them seeing you for the first time. And yes, that's critical. But, for those that don't have the budget to create that, okay, you don't need to. Then the story, co-creating that story through the email and the written word is another layer, another I guess you're moving to a different level of connection, and that's where you start building that relationship.
And you can still have imagery up front. If you don't have the video yet, you can still use the right imagery to portray that someone gets the feeling that they're in the right place, and it entices them to start reading. And then when they start reading, they discover this world of possibilities that they hadn't really thought about that much.
For sure. Yeah.
I wanted to just mention empathy as well, because I work with clients who I think generally have empathy, or they probably don't stick around in my world very, very long. But I think you can't understand someone else better than you understand yourself. Like, I feel like it has to start with yourself first. Like, I've got friends who are always trying to run around figuring out if everyone else is okay, but they're not okay themselves. And it kind of starts with you in some respects. And I wonder what you thought about that.
That's a really insightful comment, and I agree, and I think you can't have true empathy unless you can be empathic and understanding yourself. Otherwise, the empathy that you're giving to others is perhaps quite shallow, or a distraction, or it has a means to an end, or an expectation attached, maybe. And yeah, having listened to hundreds of stories through the podcasts I've hosted, and these are not just business stories, they're personal challenging stories of challenge and adversity through another podcast, I've spent a lot of time listening to stories and thought about, why is it that I can listen to these people and hold the space for them? And it is because I understand who I am. And having gone through a lot myself and in my past, but also accepting it and just accepting the human path of human condition, that we all go through some form of trauma at some stage. And I think it's only then that I've been able to just really naturally hold that space. Yeah.
Mm. In terms of then, so let's say someone's listening to this, they're nodding along. It's like, okay, well, how do we then begin to go about turning the mirrors onto ourselves? What's maybe the first thing to think about, if that's the right way of thinking about it?
Mm. Wow. Imagine, so I just had a visual image then, Rob, of someone's then standing in the hall of mirrors, where no matter where they're looking, they're just looking at a different angle of themselves. And really, that's where you start. It doesn't actually matter. It's depending on what it is that you want to achieve. But the best way to do this is simply just accept who you are and where you are at this point in life.
My wife thinks I walk around in a hall of mirrors where I only ever see myself, but sometimes she's right, sometimes she's not.
I think we all suffer from that, to be honest. Yeah. Just quietly, I've had those thoughts too. So yeah, I think it's accepting where we are. Again, going back to the conditioning, how many of us were told that the successful path was go through school, go to university, get a job, get a mortgage, have 2.3 children. Let's face it, there's this expected pathway. And there's also, I see as perceptions in society of when you should do something. And think about how we judge people if they haven't had a baby by a certain age, or been married by a certain age, or at least partnered. And there's these kind of life events and series of things that that are normalized or expected. So then if you have gone along and then there's these beliefs about what you should have done by a certain age or with a certain person or whatever, and you haven't achieved that, you could be feeling quite crap, actually. You could be feeling like, people are judging you or that you've failed. And that's, again, this is just one perspective. This is one mirror in that hall. And it's about learning to accept how you feel, but then that's not the truth, and letting go. So the moment you shine a light on the thing that is showing up for you as being hard, difficult, painful, that's triggering you, the moment you accept it, accept how you're feeling, then you allow the emotion to go. And some people need more work than others to let those peel off. Imagine it like you've just got all these layers of clothing, and when one of those layers gets shone with a particular light and you actually accept it and do the work, and then literally that layer just comes off, it disappears. It's because when we reject who we are, and that means all the aspects of us, all the things that we don't like about ourselves or hide from or run away from, that's when they stay there and they become more painful. So getting to the heart of who we are and figuring out ourselves, it always starts with acceptance. Who am I today? Can I love myself? Can I stand in the bathroom, look in the mirror and say, hey, I really love you, Aveline. The first time I did that, I cried. Felt sick, wasn't nice. It takes practice to do that. But how can you love what you do and give true love to your business if you don't love yourself?
Was that because you didn't feel like yourself was worthy of love? Or
I think so. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I think this is true in business as well. Like I think there's a lot of pressure when people set out, and let's face it, when we set out quite likely to fall on your face because of this school of hard knocks. It just is how it is. But then that isn't what we're told to expect or told to, you know, there's this thing where it's like, oh yeah, you should have quote unquote made it by
Yeah.
25 or 30 or whatever. I've been sort of fairly reassured by mentors like Perry Marshall saying that, you know, most people don't really achieve traction until they're in their 40s or maybe 50s even. I'm like, phew, that's good to hear.
Yeah. Mm.
I think I've always had absolute confidence that at some point I will kind of
Mm.
really hit my groove and achieve what I want to deliver in
Mm.
the world. But I've also come to accept that it takes time,
Yeah.
and maybe I've always even had that knowledge by the fact that every time I've had the opportunity to scale up a business that I didn't really vibrate with, so like the Google Ads work, I had the opportunity to build an agency to create the agency for Infusionsoft users. Like I definitely could have done that. Just didn't feel like it. So perhaps I knew that at the time.
Mm. And I've reflected myself thinking, you know, the exact same thing as you. You know, I've had these opportunities to scale up and do things in these areas that I wasn't fully aligned with, i.e., I didn't fully love it. And I have asked myself, well, why is it that that other person can do it? Is it because they are more aligned with that? Maybe.
Some
And
people,
it could
I think
also.
some people are capable of just viewing it as a business to then build up, to then get
Yeah.
out of and take the cash. And that's fine. It's just for whatever reasons, it's not the way my head works.
Some of us are wired a bit differently, and I've had to accept that as well. And some people, you're right, they are just motivated by the numbers. And hey, let's see this as a problem to solve. I'm going to build this, scale this up, and you know they get their meaning and purpose through maybe the growth aspect and how much they can sell something for. And they're different. They've got a different purpose, different meaning, and that's okay. It's perfect. We're all different.
Megan Masodo kind of distinguishes between artists and entrepreneurs and reckons that we're all on a sliding scale somewhere between the two, where an artist is one extreme and entrepreneur is at the other extreme. And potentially a lot of people, or a lot of us, sit in the middle. I actually think I'm weighted towards the artist end of the spectrum, in that the workout that I'm doing, in some respect, it's all about the work. It's got to feel right.
I like that. I mean, I've grown up as an artist and wanted to just do art, and then egotistically or societal kind of pressures push me down I guess a business track. You know, go to the corporate world. You know, go to university, go to the corporate world, make money. You don't make money through art. And one of my best friends as a teenager was a brilliant artist. She still is. And she's made a career of it. She teaches art in a high school. She also has a business on the side. She exhibits in galleries. She sells online, most beautiful pieces, and she's in some really nice homes. She gets featured in magazines, and she is a pure artist. And I've seen the way she's done it, and I'm really proud of her, because I think what she's done is been able to look at her art and then go along that scale, and maybe looked up the path towards the entrepreneur and said, oh, what are they doing? How can I do this? Because obviously she's got to feed herself. And that's why going into teaching and being an art teacher to year 11s and 12s was meaningful for her, and a way to obviously pay the bills. And yeah, it's just lovely to see that. Whereas I just went into business, you know, into corporate world, and art gets done in an art class when I have time. You know, very, very different path.
And I'm not, you know, if you ask me to draw you a picture, like I'm not conventionally an artist, but I've always written. I've always
There you
created
go.
stories.
You're an artist.
I would like to write a novel one day, and writing a novel is definitely art.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's just something I was thinking about. I mean, when you get a new client that you're working with, how quickly can you sense that the vibration maybe isn't quite right, so that they need to make some changes?
Pretty much in the first session, maybe to the second session. Sometimes, like I think I'm pretty good at reading people up front, even before they engage, and it comes down to their willingness to be open to the journey and do the work. So if I can sense that they're ready for a change, they know that there's a misalignment, but they just don't know how to get to the alignment, well, that's perfect, because I can help them get there and direct them if they need to, talk or see someone else with a specific skill set that I don't have. But it's very early on. Yeah.
What role does purpose play in this?
A fairly big one, in that some people are clear on their personal purpose from a young age, and some people, we see sports stars, who've risen through the ranks. They're famous the world over. They've achieved a lot, and they obviously have this purpose for their profession, and they've got obviously a skill, and there's a genius there. Then what I do believe is that purpose can also change, because we evolve and mature over time. And sometimes we achieve that purpose, because not always are we going to set out to achieve a purpose. Sorry, not always do we set a purpose that's so big that we'll never achieve it. Some people do achieve that purpose, and then it evolves, it changes, or they have a massive life event that shifts the course of their life. And typically one of those kind of events forms a purpose as well. When it comes to business, I fully believe that business is a separate entity to us. So if we're our own organism and energetic being, well, we have a business, and that is separate to us. For solopreneurs, our business is an expression of us, and understanding the purpose of your business is critical in being able to align it. So bringing your being, who you are, who you naturally are, what your genius is, to that purpose of the business is how you can connect and be in that vibrational alignment.
It's like the North Star of, that's what you face yourself towards, and then that acts as a decision-making filter to say yes or no to things that come across the table.
Yep, exactly.
What would you say your purpose is?
I wasn't expecting this question. I thought a few years ago I'd nailed it, but I realized that my purpose...
It's murky, isn't it? Because we're dealing with the future here, which is why it's hard to say, oh, this is my purpose to do X.
Look, my personal purpose is to inspire evolution. Yeah. And that's who I am. And that's the evolution of the self, community, whatever it is, to grow. It's all about growth.
Maybe.
Yeah, could be. And so understanding that, I guess I've always known that, but haven't really been able to language it that succinctly. And then there's the business purpose, and that's about inspiring impactful leaders. Because for me, the leader, so that's the leader of a business, it's definitely your listeners, it's you, it's me, it's everyone who brings themselves to their business through their genius and understanding the purpose of that business to create the change and the impact in the world. That's the person. We're all leaders. We might not call ourselves all leaders, but we are. Yeah. If we're running a business, we're a leader.
Yeah, I agree. Are there any more mirrors that we might hold up? So for someone listening, they're in the hall of mirrors, they're seeing themselves in different shapes. Where else might we, in the brief time we have here, just to get people thinking about certain things.
Mm.
What might people consider in order to kind of get a better view of themselves in one of these mirrors?
Think about, well, okay, the mirror, some mirrors, and I'm going to talk about this through the lens of marketing, because all of us, I mean, you and I are literally effectively in this marketing world. And many times what we do is we compare ourselves to others. And that's how marketing is fundamentally crafted. You know, let's compare your features and benefits to the person down the road.
That was the unique selling proposition and the entire basis thereof.
Yeah. Mm. And there's a whole lot of, you know, I believe there's a bunch of issues with that. And then it commoditizes you effectively. You're a commodity, not the unique human that you are. So the mirror that I guess I'd like you to ask or look into is, where are you selling yourself short, or where are you comparing yourself to others in what it is that you do? Because I think it's one of the biggest conditioning beliefs that we've had since probably primary school. You know, we go through school, and I know for me, I came out of school comparing myself to others, and our society feeds this, right? And you look at teenage girls and what they go through, and I've got twin boys. Well, I couldn't get a more poignant example of two kids comparing themselves to each other. I have boys at the beginning of puberty, right? One twin is about 2.5 inches taller, or maybe 3, than the other one. So, you know, they're different, and they compare themselves to each other all the time. So I'm, as a mum, going through that. But typically us humans, we forget about this, but we see magazines, we see billboards, we see other businesses being praised, getting accolades, getting awards, or, you know, seemingly making all this money or being successful. And the judge in us goes, that's not you. You're something else. You're not as good as that. Oh, look what you're doing wrong. So look in that mirror and then ask where your little, the judgy voice sitting on your shoulder is having a field day.
I think that's a very natural human thing to do as well, is to compare ourselves to other members of the tribe.
Mm. Yeah.
But it perhaps doesn't serve us very well today.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I was just thinking as you were talking, it's like it's like, how much do I fall into this trap? It's like I do compare myself to others, and I maybe spend less time worrying about it than, you know, I've got clients who very specifically created like grid views of all of their competitors, and I've never really felt compelled to do that, I have to say.
It's so funny. Part of my service a number of years ago was doing this really detailed, you know, competitive marketing, competitive positioning, and I'd have a field day doing all this, you know, comparisons to the competitors, and I don't even touch it now as part of my program. Comparing yourself to someone else isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's how you limit yourself and your belief about yourself as a result. So if we're judging ourselves and then we're holding ourselves back, we're making ourselves feel bad, wrong, you know, and all those negative kind of connotations or labels, then we are moving away from who we are. So anything that causes us to lose sense of who we are is not a great thing, especially if we then start to resist so the mirror's showing us a picture. And if we're resisting that, well, then how are we going to learn? How are we going to get rid of that thing unless we actually face the mirror, accept that it's there, and then let it go? So comparing ourselves to others, when it's through the lens of, oh, wow, look what they've done. That's amazing. Good for them. I could learn from that. How can
you
I
would
learn from that?
leverage some of the things that they're doing potentially
Yes.
if it fits into
If
your.
it fits, exactly. It's when you judge yourself in relationship to the other person is when it limits you. So it's the way that you're being aware of yourself and aware of what you're looking at. It's all about that perception, and it can yeah, it's a easy trap to fall into, to fall into the judgment and the self-criticism.
There are a few things as you were talking there. So when I did more Google Ads work, one of the processes that I would follow is for the main keywords that we were bidding on, we'd have a look at the Google search results page and we'll see who else is advertising. And you realize quite quickly that a lot of the other people bidding on the same keyword aren't actually competitors, really. Or then you get clients who'd be like, okay, they'd be very focused on competitor A. And they're like, we want to do everything that competitor A is doing. We want to deconstruct their keyword strategy. We want to copy their ads and just change it ever so slightly because we can see it's working for them. It's like, well, yeah, great. It's working for them. And then they insist that you copy what they're doing. And then they're kind of surprised that it doesn't work.
Yeah,
That,
that's right.
that was one very real example where I've experienced this kind of looking outwards, looking around, applying blindly things that other people are doing because it's other people's rules of thumb.
Mm.
The other thing that I did was I worked for a property investment training company a few years ago, and the advice on the courses that we ran was just follow the system, implement the processes. It's a business in a box. It's step by step. Do this, and you will achieve X outcome. And some students did go through the process, implement everything, and achieve X outcome. So it wasn't an erroneous promise, but a lot of people didn't. And I kind of felt at the time, it's like, well, it's not quite right for us in the way that we're presenting this to say, this is a business in a box. It's guaranteed to do X outcome. And that was why.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. And I think from my experience and what I've seen in all different areas and different businesses, this is a great example of why we need to get real clear about who we are, accept who we are, and understand that we are all different and we operate differently. We see the world differently. We do that business in a box differently to everybody else. So even if that business is identical, it's not because it's you.
Would that
So
apply even to, say, a franchise business? If you
yes,
look at that
totally. Absolutely. I mean, the product or service largely is the same, but why do people do business? Why do you do business with, say, your accountant or your dentist or your lawyer? I mean, there's probably a number of different dentists in your town. Why do you choose one over the other? Is it really price, or is it because you actually like the dentist?
Yeah, there's people that you persist with for longer periods of time. Perhaps even, I've got a friend who used to live in Rotherham, which is say 4 miles down the road, and he still goes to Rotherham for his haircut because he likes his barber.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that we don't have barbers in Sheffield, but
and the way you present that business, the way you do the business is all flavored by you, your color, your style, your energy. It's you.
I think the reason I asked about the franchise business was, is there like more of a, does this become more mission critical for certain types of businesses?
To get the genius right,
To get the
you mean?
genius right, yeah.
Yeah. Any service-based business, definitely.
Yeah, and that makes sense because that's my assessment of like who should be telling personal stories. Like often it's not so much. I mean, there are some service businesses where, do you want to hear personal stories from your plumber? Possibly, but it's more based on recommendation and trust. And
Yeah.
potentially case studies and star ratings and things like that.
Mm.
I think the clients that I've had seen the biggest use case for this has been where they're delivering something transformational. So it does lend itself to training enterprises or teaching enterprises, or as the most obvious example. But you could still be teaching and educating your clients without having a training business. It's just part of the process that they go through to achieve the outcome that you provide.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Is there one more mirror that we can turn around inwards before the end of the call? Just so, like, what else might someone think about in terms of pinpointing somewhere where they're kind of getting wrapped up in their own head? Or
Let's see.
I think just as a pointer, I think maybe intuition might be one thing to explore, because this is something that I've definitely felt over the last year. It's just like, okay, I need to like trust my random 4 a.m. ramblings a lot more, and actually try to listen to that and try to consciously think about things less, because all of that extra thinking isn't actually serving me. I wondered if that was maybe something.
It's so, I mean, how long have we got? Only a few minutes. So I'm going to keep this.
That's probably a separate call, isn't it? But, yeah.
It is, but no, let me go there because it's really relevant. I feel that the more that someone stands in that hall of mirrors and faces the mirrors and allows the layers to come back, the more that they trust in themselves. And when you trust in yourself, then you're not doing the spinny wheel in the head. You're not standing there frozen in indecision, fear, judgment, self-judgment. Okay, so when that all goes and you're not in your head, guess where you are? You're in your body. So, and what happens in there, like you said, it's the intuition. So when someone is in tune with who they are, they're connected to their business, and they've understood who they are to a large degree, and they're loving who they are and they're loving their business. Those voices or the whispers of intuition are louder. They just are, because you're not in your head. You're not being driven by the mental chatter and the whirlwind going on. So, and the more that you can hear that intuition and listen to it, I mean, we've all heard it. Everyone knows, oh, I just had a hunch, or, my gut tells me this. And however much that you have, I guess, gone into sort of personal development, study, or understanding about the human body, the mind, the spirit, we're energetic beings in physical bodies. So this intuition is always there. It's often just clouded over by the clatter in the head. The intuition to me is the pull. It's the energetic universal pull that's gone, oh, there's something that you've got to do. And every time I've listened to that, and I'm always learning and getting better at listening to it constantly, but every time it's a good decision.
Yeah.
And you've probably found that too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think stories are the realm of the body. Stories make you feel something in your body. Content and information deals with the logic and the brain. It's a similar thing. And actually, what we're trying to do by telling stories then is make people feel something, make people vibrate in the same way that we are vibrating, if there's a fit.
Exactly. And I have to say that if you're getting to that point where the intuition is telling you to do something, it's a really good thing. It's a great thing.
Brilliant. I think on that note, let's leave the conversation there. How can people find out more about this, about your services, about the 6 Star Leaders program?
Oh, great. So they can look at the website, which is journeypoint.com.au, linkedin.com/Aveline Clarke. There's stuff in there. 6-Star Leaders, we have the podcast, and we've got like a landing page at the moment. The website is being built, but we do have a landing page, and it's the number 6star leaders.com.
And depending on when you're listening to this, there's going to be a version of the Ikigai process that you can opt in for, isn't there? Because we've been kind of collaborating in some respects on that. And I'd like to encourage people to go and do that. You know what? Let's just take a minute. Let's just mention the Ikigai.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, you actually sent me the book Unlearn. Was it last year?
Hannah Burmester, yeah.
And what a great book. And he talks about the Ikigai in there. And it was then that I realized how important that was. And it was so aligned with what I was doing with my clients anyway. Anyway, and you can look this up, just Google the Ikigai, Ikigai. And it's a Japanese concept. It's about this alignment. And it was used as a way for people to figure out their internal purpose. And I think that is a great place to start. I've created a lead magnet, and it is how to do the Ikigai. It's introducing the concept of the Ikigai, and it's taking it to another level. And that's what we do in the program that I have with my clients. It's one of the foundational steps. And yeah, this lead magnet will be available hopefully when this airs or very soon thereafter. So yeah,
great. Well, I'll make sure there's a link on the episode when that's available, because I strongly encourage people to go and take a look.
Thank you, Rob.
Splendid. Great. Well, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.